Hello, and thank you for joining us for Secrets of Job Applications. My name is Joanne, and I'm from the WorkOne Northeast office, and I will be the host for today's program. My co-host is Christella, a senior librarian at the Allen County Public Library.
Hey everybody, just to let you know, today's program is being recorded, and in order to improve the quality of everybody's experience, we're gonna have everybody muted. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat box at the bottom, and we'll try to address those as we can, and then the more detailed questions we can address at the end with Joanne. So go ahead, Joanne.
Thanks, Christella. Secrets of Job Applications, learning what to include in paper and on the online applications. So what is the Secrets of Job Applications? We're going to explore this in the next 30 to 40 minutes. We are presented in partnership between the Allen County Public Library and WorkOne Northeast. We are equal opportunity. We have auxiliary aids are available upon request to individuals with disabilities, and translation services are available upon request too. So what are we going to be covering today? This is today's agenda. Why an application to, checklist and fact sheet, paper application, mistakes to avoid, online applications, and personality testing. The first one is why an application to. We're going to be looking at each one of these. The signature. Why is the signature important? Well, the employer wants to make sure that your information is true and to the best of your knowledge. Second, release, consent, and disclosure. Many times, the employer will ask for a background check. They want to make sure that they have it in writing, and with that, they want your permission, excuse me, so they can do the background check, and also to have it in writing for everyone's information. Standardized information. These are the same questions or the same procedures for all customers or applicants. Follow instructions. For example, blue pen, black pen, check mark, or an X. Make sure that you read the entire application carefully. And technology skills. This can be online. How are your computer skills? Are you a fast typist? How's your data entry? So these are things that employers will look at. The checklist. This can include a fact sheet, your resume, reference letters and letters of recommendation, documents, proof of education, and the folder. And I'm sorry I forgot to mention that we do have an application here that the handout that you can download. My apologies for not mentioning this earlier, but everything that we're going to cover today will be in this sheet for you. First, we're going to be looking at the fact sheet. The fact sheet many times is a sheet that can have your education on it, your work history, and also too, some employers may ask you to have the fact sheet versus the cell phone. A lot of people may carry everything in their cell phone information, like their work history, dates, education, but some employers may have a different opinion on that, and they may ask you to have the fact sheet, because sometimes people's cell phones can go off and they can make noises, and it can be distracting. Make sure that your resume is up to date and that you have everything listed on there. Also, reference letters and letters of recommendation. Reference letters will talk a little bit more about letters of recommendation, like who can vouch for you that you've worked at a company? How is your work ethic? Did you complete tasks? This is where reference letters and letters of recommendation can come in. Documents to complete an I-9. This would again be more for tax purposes. Proof of education, such as diploma, degree, or a certificate. Anybody could say anything, oh, I have a diploma, but if you need the proof, you may want to have your proof of your high school diploma, degree, and have a copy of it. That way that you can carry that with you and that employers will have it. And also it's good to keep everything together in a folder. That way everything will be together and you won't lose anything. Be prepared, the fact sheet. This is also in your handout here. And if you turn to page 3 of 11, it gives you an example of a fact sheet. And this will include more with your employment history and with your education. Make sure that you know your current or your previous titles. Some employers will want to know, and even though different companies may have different job titles, they all may kind of mean the same. For example, I'm going to use the example, secretary versus administrative assistant. So even though they're different job titles, they can be very similar in some ways. Make sure you know the name and complete addresses of your companies. This is important, so it tells the employer that it actually existed. Now, some of you might think, well, my place no longer exists. The place closed. Did it burn down? Did it relocate? It still is important to know the physical address that it once did exist, and employers can vouch for that. Make sure that you know your beginning and ending dates of employment. This could include, let's say, a month and a year, or sometimes people will just use years, but make sure that what you have on your fact sheet and application will be the same on your resume. Beginning and ending wages, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about this, where you can find wages at. There's different websites, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But make sure that you know kind of like the general guidelines, how much when you started there, or kind of have a ballpark figure and the ending. Make sure you have a valid telephone number, your supervisor's name, the reason why you left, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail, and some skills and accomplishments. Be prepared for the fact sheet. This would include your education history, such as name, city, and state of schools. For example, did you attend Bowling Green State University, Bowling Green, Ohio? Also, your completion dates or credit hours. Now, this might be a little tricky. If you graduated from, say, high school or college back in 1980, I hate to say it, but you're dating yourself. But instead, let's say if it's been within the last couple of years, you could put dates. Or if you haven't finished school yet, you could say a completion date or expected completion date, maybe so many credit hours. Also, too, what are you studying? Are you studying geography? So make sure you put that on your fact sheet. Reference sheet. We encourage people to usually have 3 to 4 professional and 1 to 2 personal. Why the higher number for professional? These could include supervisors, it could include maybe clergy, it could also include professors, teachers, someone who could vouch for you. For example, maybe what kind of a student you were, how was your work performance, did you arrive to work on time? So the professional is very important. 1 to 2 personal could be, say, a neighbor, it could be a family member or a close friend. Make sure that you keep your contact information updated. There's nothing worse than say, oh, I worked with this person 10 years ago. This is the email that I have and the phone number. Are you sure that information is current? Make sure that you keep your references up to date. Stay in touch with them either by email, phone, in person. Make sure that you have current email addresses, phone numbers, and also make sure, how does that reference want to be contacted? Is email or the phone? Make sure that you check with your references. Be prepared. Know the job title. Know the job you are applying for. I know a lot of people come into the WorkOne office and say, hey, I know that ABC company is hiring. I want to work there. All right. Do you know what job you're applying for? Well, I don't know anything about the company. All right. Well, let's see if we can educate you. So it's kind of important to know something about the company. What kind of a product do they make? What kind of a service? Asking for the application. Just don't put any, because if you put any, they're going to give you anything. For example, if I would go to manufacturing and I'm going to be probably, I know my forte is more working in the office environment. If I put any, they might put me in the manufacturing. Even though I've never done manufacturing, could I do it? Possibly, but that may not be my greatest forte or my strengths. Make sure that you're filling in the desired position. Some employers may have you fill out different applications for different positions, so be aware of that. Also, writing short responses to the application questions. You want to make sure that you answer it, don't leave it blank, but be brief, but don't go too long in length, because if you go too long in length, you may be kind of running out of time, especially if it's an online application. Completing the application. This one's always a good one to be aware of. Make sure that you review the application first. It's like when I was in college and I was given a reading assignment. I always looked ahead first to see how many pages I had to read. It's the same way with the application. Is it 2 pages, 5 pages, 7 pages? Where does your name go? Last name first or first name last? Make sure that you have it in the right spot. Some people will put their first name and the last name or vice versa. So make sure that you are aware of this. The address is separated from the city and state. Make sure that you print clearly and legibly. If you scribble on your handwriting, and again, I know everybody has different penmanship, but try to be as neat as you can, because if you scribble anything down, the employer is going to think, oh, is that the way you're going to be doing your work? Next, use blue or black ballpoint pen. I'm going to suggest bringing 2 of each. It would be my luck. I started out in black. My black pen, the ink runs out, or if the ink runs all over my hands and I don't have a backup, I start the application out in black or blue and I finish in another color. So that may not really look professional. So make sure that you keep it all consistent. Make sure you follow the instructions. And many applications will ask that they can contact your current employer. Be sure that you answer that the best to your ability. Completing the application. This one is always very important. Do not leave any blank spaces, such as does not apply, not applicable, or NA. Do not write C resume. This is always my favorite. I'll see people coming in, one side they're filling everything out, the other side say C resume. Well, number one, if you say C resume, the employer thinks, oh, that person is taking shortcuts. Are you taking shortcuts on the job? That could affect productivity, the product. Also, too, what happens if your resume is separate from your application? Well, if it's separate, you won't see resume. That's nothing for the employer. So the employer just might put your application in the trash. Be honest. No matter what, be honest. Make sure, because if you are using false information and later the employer finds out, you could be terminated. Also, make sure that you tailor your answers to the job you are applying for. This is important for you to know, that you know what they're expecting, and that you don't go off on a tangent either. Again, make sure that you read the fine print of release, consent, and disclosure for permission, background checks. Make sure you sign and date the application. A lot of employers will ask for this. I've taken applications, and many people, before they leave, I'll take a look at it, and there's no name and there's no date. That's almost like telling yourself, take the application and throw it in the trash. Make sure you sign it and date it. It's a way that it's a final completion to the application. Now, how do you answer these questions? Position desired. Again, do not put any. Do list the different job titles. Make sure that you know what job title you're applying for. And again, this is where you could come into the WorkOne office, do some research, connect with a career advisor. We can kind of help coach you with some of this information. Desired salary. List the specific amount per hour or per year. It could be negotiable or between a dollar amount. Here's an example that I'm going to kind of give you. Let's say you want to work between $15 and $20 an hour. Sometimes by putting a range down, you're not kind of shortchanging yourself. However, what if you have an online application and you have to put in the exact dollar amount? It's not going to give you additional space to put in the range. So what you may want to do is take the average between the range between 15 and 20, which is $17.50, and put that down. There's also some websites that I'm going to share with you. One is called IndianaCareerConnect.com, IndianaCareerReady.com. You can go on there and you can find information on there. If you go clear to the bottom, there will be a website that you can go. There's also Hoosier by the Numbers, that you can go down there and you can see what is in your region. For Northeast Indiana region, maybe a machinist is paid, let's say, $20 an hour. However, another part of the state might be different. But you can go to, again, to those two websites, IndianaCareerReady.com, or you could Google and you can say Hoosier by the Numbers, and that will bring it up. Now, when are you available to start? If you're not working right now, you could actually put an actual date. However, if you are working, avoid putting as soon as possible or immediately. If you are working right now, I would suggest that you put 2 weeks after offer is acceptable, or you need to give a 2-week notice to your employer. Now, if you say, oh, I'm not going to give a notice to my employer, that may not look very good. The reason why is if you say, oh, my employer doesn't need to know. Well, if your new employer would hire you, are you going to do that to your new employer? So it's good that you are show mindfulness and consideration, and to give a 2-week notice. Now, how do you answer these questions? This one's always kind of interesting to say. Why did you leave your former employer? Avoid words such as fired or quit. It leaves many times more of a negative impression on the employer. Some examples that you could say is, you could say resigned, laid off, plant closure, terminated, retired. Sometimes I've seen people use the term their hours have been cut back, so they're seeking, more full-time employment. Perhaps they're returning to school, so they're looking for a part-time job. I have a couple examples myself. I know at one time I was working in a bank. This was some time ago, and working in the bank was really not my forte, especially being a bank teller. And I knew that that wasn't my strong suit. And the employer knew that wasn't my strong suit either. So what happened was I didn't quit and I wasn't fired, but we called it a mutual agreement. And at that time, we both agreed that, hey, that wasn't for me, but we were able to agree on that. That was a mutual agreement. Also, before I started working for the state of Indiana, I actually worked for the state of Ohio. And with that, when I left the state of Ohio, I did quit, but what I put down was I relocated. The reason why I relocated was because I married and moved to Indiana. And also for the state of Ohio, to work for the state of Ohio, you had to live in the state of Ohio. So I just put that as a brief notation, and I just said more for relocation purposes. Also, it's also good to make sure that you don't blame anybody when it comes to looking for a job. It's real easy to blame, but it's not always the best. Make sure that you take responsibility and be honest. For example, let's say you were terminated for attendance. Be prepared to explain the circumstances with a short explanation. You learn from it and you're able to move on and that you're ready to return to the workforce. Also, sometimes employers, depending on the reason, there are different what we call bonding programs. And with these special bonding programs, it can protect the employer from potential losses. I'm going to give you an example. At one time, before I worked for the state of Ohio, I had worked in a church for a number of years in the office environment. And they asked me to be bonded. The reason was, it's not that they didn't trust me, but they wanted that bonding program to protect them, because there were times I counted money from Sunday, whatever, and they needed to protect themselves, in which I respected that. So this is kind of like an insurance program for the employer. And also too, never talked negatively about a past employer. I worked at this place for years. It was just terrible. They treated me like a secondhand citizen. Avoid that if you can. Make sure that you talk positively. Perhaps you had a difference of opinion. That does happen, but leave on a good note. You're never sure when that employer may know another employer. Here are some mistakes to avoid. Misspelled words. I cannot tell you enough. That is really important. If your spelling is not your forte, by all means, carry a dictionary with you or have one with you. You cross off the words. If you cross off too many words, it's going to look like your work may be messy. A messy application. Oops. There you go. Will you take this for me, please? If you say the dog ate your application, that's not going to fly. So make sure that your application is neat and complete. Make sure that avoid conflicting information on an application resume, such as your dates. Make sure that your dates are, say, the month and the year, or make sure the years, the location. Avoiding wrinkled, stained, or folded. If you have wrinkled application or it's got a coffee stain on it, the employer thinks that's how your work is going to be, messy and incomplete. And again, make sure that you sign and date your application. Online applications. Some companies let you apply online from home. Others will have you go into their facility or use a kiosk. Make sure that you allow yourself enough time. This can be a little tricky. Some applications may be timed, so make sure that you have all your information ready. Make sure you have electronic version of resume and the cover letter. In your handout on page 7, We talk a little bit about uploading your resume and cover letter and attaching your resume and cover letter. Make sure that you have that nearby. Let's say, for example, maybe your computer skills are not as fast as someone else. Perhaps someone may assist you or be nearby. Or this is also a time that you may want to work on your computer skills. Here at the WorkOne office, we can have set you up. You can come in by appointment, and we could give you some websites so that you can kind of work on your computer skills. Also, to make sure that you create a username and a password, and make sure that you write it down. Do you keep everything up here? That would be great. But make sure that you know your username, because many employers now will ask you to create an online username and account first. It's also recommended that if you can print off your application, if that's possible, you may want to print it off and keep that. And that's what we would recommend. Companies may also use auto select software for keywords, and we're going to be looking at this in a few minutes. Make sure that you use words found in the job description. If you're not sure what keywords are, the next screen will help you. But this is where WorkOne can assist you. We have career advisors who can help you with this. There are going to be keywords in the job description. Make sure your resume will mirror that or tailor that. So those keywords, that's going to help you land the interview. Review the application for errors before you submit. Again, I've been in a hurry sometimes, and I've just submitted, and later I could just, how could I do that? So make sure that you review everything. And again, make sure that you read and complete the section for release, consent, and disclosure. Here's an example. This is known as ATS, Applicant Tracking System. Some employers will use this. Many employers only have 5 to 10 seconds to look at a resume. And if they have hundreds of resumes, they're not going to go through that. So they might use this ATS, Applicant Tracking System, to help them to review resumes, and it helps them to save time and money, and to invite to the interviewing process. Here's an example here. As what you can see here you have the right and left side. The word Microsoft Word is in purple. That shows up one time at the top. The word Excel is in yellow. That appears once. The word account or accounts shows in the turquoise 3 times, and the word manage shows up 4 times. So if the word would show up several times, the more matches you have, the greater your chances of being invited to an interview. If you are not sure, again, of keywords, let me invite you. We have a couple of workshops at the WorkOne office. It's called Identifying Your Skills, Resume Development. Give us a call. We can get you scheduled over the phone. And at the end, we'll give you more information where the website that you can contact us. Also, there is a website called onetonline.org. onetonline.org can give you like a summary report of the different tasks of a job, the skills, the tools, the abilities. And if you look in your handout on page 11 of 11, it will have ONET Online, and that's the last of those 4 of the sources. So that would be a good website to visit. Skills test. This is a test that may be required when you submit an application. The test can be timed. The test could be on math, reading, computers, ruler reading, and many others. I have an example. Once when I worked for the state of Ohio, I worked as a secretary there, and I had to take a typing test. and I love to type, and I always like to see how fast I can type. Well, it's great to see how fast you type, but the faster I type sometimes, the more mistakes I made. Well, they're looking at very low turnover rate, typos. So I had to more or less, I felt confident with my typing skills, but I needed to slow down a little bit on my speed. And when I slowed down a little bit, I had less errors. So be aware of that. Some employers will want to know your math skills. Can you read it with computer, ruler reading? Other common things that employers are looking for. Do you have the required skills? How do you handle being under pressure? And again, this can be different for every situation. And can you follow directions or instructions? If you don't follow your supervisor's directions, not only could you be hurting yourself, but you could also put yourself in danger, and you could also be putting your coworkers in danger too. Personality testing. Different people I know say they don't like personality testings. Well, sometimes the different people I've talked to said an employer may ask the same question, but they might reword it 3 or 4 different times. This might be kind of tricky. This can be timed. They're looking for consistency. Here's an example that you may want to be aware of. Let's say an insurance company will be doing a personality testing. They want to know, let's say, for example, a sales representative or customer service rep. How are you going to interact? Let's say, for example, I'm a customer service rep, and I have a customer calls in, is having problems, let's say, with a product. That test is going to know if, like if you're an extrovert or an introvert. And many times it's just knowing maybe the right questions to ask. So this is why the personality testing comes in handy. Also, common things the employer is looking for is, do you work well with others? How do you communicate with people in person, on the phone? Also, too, how do you communicate people through email? That's very important too. Know how to provide quality customer service. Are you able to work independently? Work with others? Can you supervise? Are you ethical or an honest person? For example, this may deal with money. This may deal with social security numbers, health information. I know at the WorkOne office, I see many people's social security numbers and birthdays. That information, I may ask for it, but that stays at the office. That is something, and I have to sign something, and I have to be agreed that that is very confidential, and I need to respect that. So make sure that you're aware of that. In your handout, there is a 2-sided practice application for you, and that, I believe, is on pages 9 and 10 that you can take a look at after the workshop here. Also, if you have any questions on the practice application, you can always contact the local WorkOne office. Some of our sources from today is Indiana Career Ready, Career Builder, Job Search, and ONET Online. Before we conclude this, I just want to thank you for visiting us today and spending time with us. But we also offer other workshops too, such as resume development, cover letters, interviewing with confidence, networking with personal brand. Please visit us at www.neinworks.org, and that's WorkOne Northeast Works. There you can contact us. We have our list of locations, our hours of operation, and phone numbers to make appointments. So thank you. I'm going to hand it over now to Christella.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. That was a lot of great information. I was just going to reiterate, you said some people can call, and how are your services changing? As I know there is some limited amount of people allowed in your building right now, correct?
That is,
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
We are encouraging people to call before you come in. We've had people, several people today come up to our front door and say, hey, I just want to come in and do this. We're going to ask you to call for an appointment because of the COVID. Our phone number is 260-745-3555. Please leave a number. We'll call you back as soon as we can.
Just want to check and make sure. I don't think there are any questions in our chat at the moment. So I was just going to go over some information. Like WorkOne, the library is limiting services right now, but you can make an appointment to use the computer. So if you give us a call on the number on that slide, we'll be happy to make a reservation for you. And that's at any branch right now. And you can also email us if you have any questions about job search materials. We have all kinds of things that you can use. If you do need materials that are in the library's catalog, you can place a hold and you will have to do a curbside pickup. Browsing is not currently allowed. So, but yeah, just give us a call if you need help with any of that stuff. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Joanne.